I'm gonna make a lidded pot. I'm thinking kimchi fermenter, something cylindrical, thick so I can carve the crap out of it. And I'm gonna show you 3 different lids. There's a simple lid, a slightly more decorative lid, and then there's the interlocking, complicated, I need to know math lid. So let's go. Okay. So I'm using clay that is slightly stiffer than something that's straight out of the bag. I'm using older clay since you never know when everyone's gonna get back in here. So I'm actually gonna use warm water. Many of you know I'm against throwing with warm water. You know, your hands get cold, but the warm water makes the clay a little too soft. When you're a beginner, you tend to use a lot of water. I'm also a fan of water. So what happens is you actually just start to create slip while on the wheel. But by using warm water with drier clay, it does actually achieve the desired flexibility, elasticity. But what also happens is that the inside of the clay, right in here, tends to not move. So when you cone up, you tend to get that volcano. What my solution to that is I sort of peel back the clay with my right hand. I try and expose it so that I can then add water, and then I mix it up into the clay. Start to peel that back again, expose that dry clay, because what happens is the wet clay on the outside starts to ride up around the side of the dry clay in the middle. So I kind of just expose it, and I'm kind of just doing this, and then peeling back. I think that's about it as I splatter clay in my face. And I think we're pretty close, as close as we're gonna get. All right, so now I'm gonna go and open it up, pop out that air bubble. There's an air bubble the rest of the end of the world. It depends on how bad it is, where it's located. I'm gonna open up just a straight cylinder. People often ask me what type of clay I prefer. I'll use anything that's in front of me. Depending on the color story I'm trying to tell, if I'm thinking I want pure, just color being the highlight of the piece, I'm going to use white. I do not like grogless clay. I know that people complain about the grog on their hands. Sometimes we have to suffer for our art. I find that the grog, when there's no grog, it's very hard to trim. I can't seem to get my tool to go in there. It's sort of closer to porcelain, which is difficult to begin with. Now, when you're making a lidded pot, what is very important if you're going to do the type of lidded pot that has the gallery. So the gallery is that space where the lid sits inside of, or the ledge, as I call it, is that as you're pulling your wall, you're putting even pressure, even pressure, even pressure. Up at the top here, I'm not going to stop, but I'm going to put a lot less pressure so that I can maintain a thick lip. That thick lip needs to split so that you can create the space for the lid to sit in. If the top of your lid is the same thickness as your walls, if this is 1/4 of an inch and this is 1/4 of an inch, when you split this in half, this becomes 1/8 of an inch, and it becomes a lot more fragile. So I'm almost creating sort of like a V. Here's the side of my wall, and I'm creating sort of a shelf. Now, I started before, is an air bubble a pain? It is. I have one in the middle, but as long as I just kind of ignore it. As I've said often, an air bubble is not what makes things explode. It's the moisture that's trapped inside that air bubble. So you can let something thick with air bubbles sit for weeks, maybe even months. As long as that moisture is out of there, you're in good shape. Now when you're making your pot, you want to make it with intention, so you want to kind of know what you're going to be making. And this is something I think I'm going to do my hashtag carve the shit out of. So I want to leave my walls relatively thick, especially because I want to ferment food in here. But one of the other important things that I want to do is create a smooth wall. So when I have those finger marks, which I enjoy when that becomes the feature of the pot, if I'm going to carve it, I find that having a smooth wall doesn't fight with the carving. Makes it easier to carve, but also doesn't fight. If you've got finger marks that are constantly going horizontal and you're trying to carve something vertical or in some sort of decorative way, it's going to be hard and it's going to be fighting and it's not going to really make sense. So as I always say, you want to know what you're going to make before you sit down. Throw with intention. Okay, so I'm going to maintain this is thick, my lip is thick. I'm going to compress that so that I can split it up. I'm going to stop for a second so that you guys can see the top of the pot. Alright guys, I think you should be able to see what I'm doing when I do this based on the angle. So what I'm going to do is, this is tool number 5, which is one of my favorite tools. It is just a wood tool, but it's got this sort of straight edge. Whenever I'm making my gallery or ledge, I always do 3/4 of the length of this. This way, no matter what pot I make, when I'm measuring for my lid, I know that that gallery, that shelf, is going to be 3/4 of an inch, or 1/2 inch, sorry, bigger than the actual, then you'll see what I'm talking about. All right. So I'm going here, I'm going to have my finger horizontal like this. What I'm actually doing, I'm going to push the clay down, and as I'm pushing the clay down, my finger is going down. If I keep my finger up, it's going to squeeze it to be too thin. Wet tool, wet finger, pick a spot. I'm going to start to push down. I have a firm grip on the tool. I'm also pushing down with my thumb. You want to make sure that it's deep enough so that when that lid is sitting in there, it doesn't jump over. Then I'm going to compress the side here, and I want to compress the vertical part that's going to hold my lid. I'm going to collar it in just a little bit. So if my walls are this thick, that is how thick I want this vertical piece to be. Now here comes the engineering part of being a potter. You can need to measure from inside here and inside here. As I said, I'm going to show you 3 different types of lids. Something that's just a disc that sits on top, something that's a little rounder that sits on it, and then something that's interlocking. So what is important is measuring here and here. So these are calipers. I don't normally use calipers because I'm not that slow moving to not mess them up. So we go ahead and measure that. And then I always know that this ledge is about 3/4 of an inch. So whatever this is, this will move in just a little bit. Or I'm a big fan of the ruler, and we use centimeters. We've just started here because we figured it's easier, smaller increments. So the inside of that is 14.5 centimeters, and then the spot between here and here, that's 12 centimeters. Go ahead, I'm going to get rid of my extra stuff down here. Make it go away, get water out of the inside. All right, I'm going to call it, and lids are next. Bye.